Hello everybody, and on to the next one, which, as the last one was, the A.H. Taylor Jr., was again a really kind donation from Nick and Kathy at the Whiskey Shop in Lincoln. So I'm not going to put the picture up. If you want to know what it looks like, go back and watch the other one. So this was the other one of the two bourbons that he donated. I think it was he'd got some tasting bottles and basically poured some into a miniature. So I have this, which is Stagg Jr. Now, George T. Stagg purchased, or basically bailed out, Edmund Haynes Taylor in 1878, when Taylor got into financial difficulties, and Stagg basically bought him out and owned the distillery. So it carried on being called the George T. Stagg Distillery even when Sazerac bought it in 1992, and it changed to the Buffalo Trace Distillery in 1999. I haven't even told you where the distillery is. It's in Frankfort, Kentucky. I'll put the map up where that is now, but if you've watched the Buffalo Trace one, that's got the map up and that's got the full details of the distillery. So George T. Stagg is sort of a very key part of the history of the Buffalo Trace Distillery. And in 2002, Buffalo Trace announced that they were going to launch a range of whiskies. They were going to launch a whiskey called the George T. Stagg, and this was going to be part of they called it the Antique Collection. So it was an annual release, and there was a couple of others whose names completely forgotten. I think the Sazerac Rye was one of them, and one of the others, and I can't remember which one. But basically, these were like special, super premium, limited edition type bottlings that they were going to do. The George T. Stagg was released every year, and it was about, I think the first one was a 15-year-old, but I think it's become a 17-year-old, or it was the other way around. It was a 17 and that was 15. Call it 15 to 17-year-old. At cask strength, barrel proof, whatever you want to call it, and it was a high cask strength. This was like 65 to 70% ABV. This was strong stuff, even more than 70% ABV. So this was like full on, really, really intense flavors, ABV, the lot. This was like bang. Now, Jim Murray in 2004, which I think was the first time he'd launched the Whiskey Bible, named the George T. Stagg for that year as his Whiskey of the Year, and it just took off. Everybody wanted it, and I'll be honest, I was the same, because at the time I was into bourbons. I always have been for ages, and it was like, I've got to find this, and it sells out like Billy-O. It's just rock hard to find. It ain't cheap. You're looking at $100, $150, maybe more, depending on the demand and where you are in the world and everything like that. But it's one of those sort of like, if you drink bourbon, you've got to have a bottle of this on your shelf, and you're going to pay for it. So in 2013, all of a sudden Buffalo Trace announced that they were going to release another Stagg, much to the pleasant surprise of everybody. But this was going to be called Stagg Jr, which is this one, and Stagg Jr looks like this. So this is essentially it's, as it says, it's Stagg Jr. It is a cut down version, for want of a better word, to the full-on George T. Stagg. So you're looking at about $50 to $70 for this. It's about an 8 to 9 year old, and I'm not sure whether it's got any age statement on it, but I don't think the original George T. Stagg has either. So it's about an 8 to 9 year old. Now this is small batch, it's not single barrel, and this is released twice a year rather than at once every year annually. Now every batch that they do comes at a different ABV or a different proof, so it has become a collector's item because people now want the latest version, because you can now have essentially a vertical tasting or a vertical collection of all the various Stagg Juniors that have come out over the years, because quite a few people now refer to Staggs by Stagg 137.2, Stagg 140.3, and all of this lot. They're actually delineating each release by the barrel proof that it is. Now, Nick didn't put on what the ABV was on this, so I'm going to go with this was the latest version of Stagg Jr, which I think is 67.2% ABV, so it's 123 0.1. Is that right? My maths is shocking. Something like that, anyway. No, 0.6, 123.6. Yeah, I'll go with that. So, but from what I gather, this is the latest one. Now, Amazon are selling this at £75 a bottle, which, considering Master of Malt and the Whisky Exchange was selling the E.H. Taylor that I've just had at 95 quid a bottle, doesn't seem to be too bad a price, particularly as it's about 50. I found it for $50 online in a store online in New York, but it was kind of creeping up a bit. There was a couple of places selling it for 70, so we'll go for about the 50 to $70 mark, that sort of thing. And don't pour it straight in there, put it in there. I'm hoping there's enough, because it's looking like that's a little bit of a... Ooh, only just. I think there's probably 24 mils in there rather than 25, but we'll go with it. Let's face it, I'm not going to get any more Stagg, not unless I'm very, very, very lucky. So the George T. Stagg was like consistently rated incredibly highly, 95, 97 out of 100 here, there and everywhere, winning awards all over the place, so everybody was wanting it. So this was a way of Buffalo Trace being able to expand upon that range and go, right, okay, if you can't get hold of George T. Stagg, we've got Stagg Jr. Yes, it's a cut down version, yes, it's younger, all this lot, but at least you've got a bottle with Stagg on it. So, geez, I mean, 67.2%, I've got water ready because I know I'm going to need it, because that is a high alcohol percentage. So, I'm going to have to be quite careful as I'm nosing this, because at such a high alcohol percentage, if you took too much of a deep breath in through your nose, you could actually damage some of the nerve endings in your nose. Not permanently, but it's going to affect being able to pick up a lot of those flavours. Now there's quite a woodiness to it as well. There's something there, but it's not quite mint, but it's quite a sharp nose. Slightly orangey. It's like orange peel in there. Yeah. It's like orange Tic Tacs, actually. Orange Tic Tacs and leather. Right, I'm going to try it without water first, just to give it a chance, just to see what it's like without the water. I'm guessing that the alcohol percentage, the high alcohol that's in there, is going to mask a lot of the flavours, but I'll see if I can pick something up with it. Not a chance. I'll try another little sip, but I mean, there is something there. There is the merest hint of a Christmas cakiness. There's some good, there's some classic bourbon flavours in there. There's dark fruits, but Jesus Christ. I mean, it's just too full on. And this is one of the very few whiskies I've had where at cask strength it's almost undrinkable. There are not many cask strength whiskies that I've had where I've had to stop and had to add water to it. Normally on a cask strength I can pick something up, there's enough balance to it, but this is just so full on. It's just ridiculous. Now I can imagine there's some people out there, probably men, that are watching this now, or if they were watching this, would go, oh, there's nothing wrong with it. Oh, I drink it neat all the time. If you have to add water to it, then you're a big wuss and you're a big girl's blouse and everything like that. And as a test of masculinity, yeah, drink a shot of that neat. That'll put hairs on your chest. But it's just killing it. It's absolutely the fire on that alcohol is just killing everything It's almost numbing my mouth. It's just ridiculous. So I'm going to have to put, not a huge amount, but I'm going to have to put way more than I normally would do to try and open this up, because it's just too hot. It's too hot, it's too fiery. And I'll have another sip and just see whether I can get anything else out of it. In fact, let me have a sip of water itself, because I'll do a shot. Because it's actually burning the inside of my mouth, and it just feels like I'm not going to be able to taste anything else. And it's nearly 70%, for Christ's sake. It's just ridiculous. Why would you do that? See, that's better. It's opened out. Slightly smoky, actually. It's almost an ashiness to it. Kind of like the embers of a barbecue, where it's got like a little bit of meat juices that have dripped down, so you get that slight meaty smokiness. But it's the ashes rather than the actual kind of the barbecue's going. This is post-barbecue, about half an hour later. The embers are still slightly warm, but it's that ashiness that's there as well. Infinitely better. Completely different drink, and so much better. Now, I can taste flavours now. That's nice, isn't it? Now there's a meatiness to it. There is kind of a barbecued beefiness. So we're not talking a burger or a sausage. We're talking a thick slab of steak on the barbecue. This would be a great bourbon to go with on a barbecue. It's really rich. I think I've lucked out in that I've put almost exactly the right amount of water in, because it's got a really nice rich mouthfeel to it, so it's not been diluted too much. There's very little burn at the back of the throat, so I've managed to knock all that down. But I think if I'd have put a few more drops in, it would have been diluted slightly too much, and that rich meaty mouthfeel that I've got would have been diluted too much, and I wouldn't be picking it up. Now this is really good with the water in it. It's a little bit too fiery for me. I know I've just talked about knocking the alcohol down. I'm talking about the flavours in it. It's quite spicy. It's quite hot in terms of flavour. And if you've watched some of my other bourbon reviews, you'll know that I'm not a massive fan of that more fiery style. I prefer the fruitier, smoother style of bourbon. And this is going the other way. It's a little bit too hot for me. The first mouthful had a really nice meatiness to it, but this heat's starting to come back in, and it's a spiciness of the bourbon itself rather than the alcohol burn. So if you like your hot bourbons, if you like the spice and the fieriness of a bourbon, that style, then this is probably the one for you. It does bring me to a thought, following some conversations that I've had. When I say conversations, like messages back and forth in terms of comments and things like that on some of my videos and Facebook and things like that, in terms of cask strength and releasing whiskies where the alcohol percentage is too high. And some people have said, and it's a fair point to make, some people have said you can add water to a whiskey that the alcohol percentage is too high. You can't take the water out to bring that alcohol percentage back up if the alcohol percentage is too low, which is a fair point, because everybody has different tastes, and for some people, maybe not without adding any water, but some people might prefer just a few drops in that Stagg just to knock it down a little bit, but want that fire. Whereas I prefer, obviously, clearly a bit more water to bring more of the flavours out and have less of that heat. The problem I have is it's difficult to get that balance right. As I said, I was lucky there that I got what I think is just exactly the right amount of water to release the flavours and take all the heat out. So that was pure luck. There was no science involved in right, it is a 60% ABV, I have that amount in the glass. If I add this amount of water in, that will make the total amount 40% ABV or 45% ABV, because that's delving into mathematics that I couldn't even fathom where to start in terms of volume plus that to make that percentage and all this lot. I'm sure there probably is an equation to go, right, if you've got a 30ml shot at 60% ABV, how much water do you need to add into it to make it 40% ABV? Somebody will probably put the answer in the comments. But it's pure luck to, I've seen reviews on YouTube and everything like that where some people have got a spoon and I've got this crappy syringe thing that I bought off eBay. I've got a pack of them for about £1. This syringe that I use, but some people just use a little jug and other people have got spoons, and it's like I always add 2, 1, 2, and some people just keep on going and going and going. You're probably always going to get, if you've got a bottle of cask strength, you're probably always going to get a different type of flavour depending on what water you add into it. If you're not paying attention, or if you're kind of using a syringe, unless you're using a syringe and going, right, I'm going to add 1 ml at a time until I get the flavour that I like, and then every time I have a glass, as long as I get the right size glass and the right size measure in it, I just need to add 5 ml of water and then I'll be happy. Who wants to mess around with that? It's just wasting everybody's time. The way I see it personally is they should put it in the bottle at the percentage that they think is absolutely optimum, that you don't have to add water to it. And if you feel that they've added too much water or there's not enough water, then that's not the whiskey for you. Not that, and I think I might have said previously that they've not done their job properly, which isn't actually fair and is probably a bit hyperbole in terms of they haven't done their job properly for that whiskey to be right for me. That's what I mean by they've not done the job properly. So 40% is the legal minimum. They can't go any lower than 40%. If you've got a 40% whiskey and you feel like you need to add water to it, what you're then drinking is not legally whiskey, and suggests that as a whiskey, to say whiskey on the bottle, it's not doing its job properly because you've had to add more water to it to then make it legally not whiskey. I think that makes sense in my head, but what I'm saying probably doesn't. So if they've gone for barrel proof, fair enough, everybody can then add water to it, but it's an extra layer of buggering about that I haven't got time for, to be perfectly honest. I'd rather Buffalo Trace went, right, there's your Stagg Jr, and there it is at 47.5%, because that's what we feel is the absolute optimum ABV that gets the right balance of fire and alcohol to flavours, and that's what we think is its optimal level, and we've done all the work for you, and that's it. And then if you don't like it, fair enough. Rather than go, here's your barrel proof, you figure out how you want to drink it. Now some people really want to do that, and some people love doing that, and there are probably people that have syringes and do all the maths and everything like that. I'm guessing they're in a minority. I'm hoping they're in a minority, because there are better things to be doing with your life. But actually, no, that's unfair, because we all enjoy different things and we like spending time on things that other people think are stupid. So that's an unfair comment, and I apologise for that. But I just think that releasing it barrel proof is interesting. I would rather, in fact, you know what would be ideal is if Buffalo Trace went, right, we've got Stagg Jr and we've got 2 versions of it. We've got a barrel proof, because if you want barrel proof, there it is for you, and if you want to mess around with water, that's it. And what we've also got is we've got a 40 whatever proof or a 50 whatever proof, and that is what we think is the optimum ABV for you to be getting the most out of that whiskey. And then you've got a choice. You can go, right, I'll take the barrel proof, whether it's, theoretically it's slightly more expensive because you've got more whiskey in it, but you've got the option to be able to go, right, I'll go for the barrel proof because I want to add water, and I might prefer it at 55 or 42 or whatever. Or you go, right, I trust you guys that you know what you're doing, you've been doing this for years, and I'm going to go for your standard, ABV, your recommended ABV, and I'll go with it. And if it's not for me, then I might try the barrel proof, or I might go, do you know what, it's not for me, I'll try another whiskey. That's me. That's it's not even a rant, but it's just my personal thoughts on ABVs and barrel proof and adding water to whiskey. Because I'm pretty certain that there are a couple of ones where I've added water to it during this challenge where I probably haven't got the balance right, and I'm only trying 25ml, so it's very, very difficult for me to get what that right balance might be. Anyway, rant over. Christ, I've hit 20 minutes. I do apologise about that. Right, I think I've got one more Buffalo Trace, and then we shall carry on. I'm nearly at the end of the Americans, so let's get through them, and then we'll go on to something a bit more unusual maybe. Right, I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.